Welcome everyone to this first RMIT SEEDS Social Enterprise Forum for 2012. My name is Julie Roberts and I'm the manager of the Social Enterprise Group, and I'm delighted to open this event this evening. I want to acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. I also want to thank Fed Square for their generous sponsorship of this forum series, and it's great to be here tonight in this fantastic space. I'd like to start by just telling you a little bit about SEEDS and our initiative at RMIT. SEEDS is an initiative aimed at developing the social enterprise activities both within RMIT and its wider community. The Social Enterprise Group works to further the opportunities, understanding and development of social enterprise, and in particular look for ways to support socially focused activities and enterprises within RMIT. Danny, for those of you who may not know him, is the former CEO of Engineers Without Borders, and he's the current CEO of Small Giants. The Social Enterprise Group, which encompasses SEEDS, sits within the College of Business, but we support student activities across the university. We run fellowships where we support students to take an idea that they might have for a social enterprise, and we put them through a series of workshops, and we provide them with a mentor, and we help them to develop that idea into a fully fledged plan that they may be able to take for a startup. We also have a modest investment fund, and we use that to help startup enterprises. And for instance, we've sponsored Lady Fingers DJs, which played for us tonight. And Lady Fingers DJ is an initiative to provide opportunities for DJing for women from multicultural backgrounds. And we particularly thank them for their contribution tonight. We also run workshops throughout the year, such as the Germinator, which is to get students thinking about some ideas that they might have and developing them into a more robust plan that they might actually act upon. Planning for the long term, we're developing new courses in social enterprise and sustainable activities, and we'll be running those through the College of Business, but they're aimed across the university so that any student, no matter what their discipline area, whether it be engineering, construction, fashion design, creative writing, whatever, will have the opportunity, if they want, to look at how they might develop that into a sustainable and social enterprise. Events such as this evening come within our community ambit, and that's our commitment to engaging with the community in a productive way and to model what we're teaching. So we not only want to talk about being, appropriate and social in our response to how we conduct our lives, but we also want to enact it through our activities. So RMIT is committed to active, transformative learning, and we want to practice what we preach. Social enterprise is a relatively new sector in the business world. Arguably, there have always been social enterprises, but we had a discussion in the green room before we came on stage, and as some people commented, they were doing social enterprise, they just didn't know that's what they were doing because there wasn't a name for it at that stage. But it is being named more frequently, and it's being identified as a really powerful force in the marketplace, and we want to contribute to the development of that. Social enterprise covers a wide range of activities, from not-for-profit through to for-purpose or benefit with profit enterprises, and we really support that wide spectrum, and we want to expose students and the community to all the range of that spectrum. In December this year, we're holding a conference called Global Shifts. We'll again be exploring that spectrum there. We're calling it Global Shifts because we think the world is shifting. We're dealing with things like climate change, we're dealing with things like people moving increasingly to the cities, we're dealing with the fact that our resources are finite, that the way that we're living is not sustainable, that the economics of the world is changing, and the world is in a state of flux, and we want to explore some of those issues through the conference. Within that state of flux of the world, there are many wanting to make a positive change. There are people who are trailblazing the way to a more equitable, socially just and sustainable future, and our guests tonight are amongst those people. Last year we brought to Melbourne Pamela Hardigan from the Skoll Foundation at the Saïd Business School in Oxford, and at her public lecture, Pamela described social entrepreneurs as mad scientists in the social innovation lab. So who are social entrepreneurs, and what's different about being a woman social entrepreneur? And why have we chosen women in social enterprise as a topic tonight? Well, I don't need to tell you that a gender gap still exists in the workplace, that men are still paid more than women, that more men than women occupy positions of power, that boards of major corporations that impact so powerfully on our lives are still dominated by men. We know all that already. What we hope to learn from tonight is what's different about being a woman entrepreneur. If being an entrepreneur is to challenge the status quo, to be innovative, to be a little mad, or as the economist Joseph Schumpeter, I knew I was going to stumble on that name, Schumpeter has expressed it, to reform or revolutionise the pattern of production, then how do women do it differently? Studies into the workplace practices consistently find that women are more people-focused and values-driven. We tend to work in areas that are economically less valued and even at times invisible. Women look to get more out of their careers and work, and I'd argue they want to give more through their work as well. And that's an idea that I'd like you to keep in mind as we listen to our guests talking tonight. I'm going to leave it to our fantastic host, Jan Owen, to lead us in finding out more specific information about our guests. I'd like to proudly state that 3 of them are RMIT alumni. But I want to, more importantly, point out that they are here because they have made and are making a difference. They are enterprising and resourceful, and they are working successfully in important areas that contribute positively to the health and well-being of our community. Jan herself, our host tonight, is an embodiment of all of these values. She was awarded an AM for her services to youth and children, and she has an impressive history in working to create social good. You may have seen a profile on Jan in the Zone section of The Age earlier this week as well. Jan is now the CEO of the Foundation for Young Australians. She's a member of several boards, and I'm very proud to say that she's a member of the RMIT College of Business Advisory Group as well. So I'm now going to hand you over to Jan to lead the discussion tonight and learn more about our guests. Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, very much. Listen, I want to also extend a welcome to all of you and thank you for coming out tonight. We've almost got a full house, which is talks a lot about why this topic is so important and these stunning 4 women that you're about to hear from and their journey. So I wanted to start a little bit with today about my journey in social enterprise, which is a very short journey. I'm going to talk about the sort of under 10. And I won't talk about my first one, which doesn't actually count, which was when I was 8. And I, for some God-forsaken reason, thought that other people might be interested in buying my polished rock collection, which I set up at the end of my driveway all day, for days on end, for passing cars. The only problem is I lived 25 k's out of Brisbane City. A car passed about once a week, and so I got over that very quickly. But it was an early entry, and I was quite proud of the fact that I had the perseverance 2 years later at the age of 10 to have another crack. And I realised then that there was a revenue to be raised from a social enterprise. So my father worked at the University of Queensland, and they, at that time, you can't do this anymore, but they used to collect animals, and in particular in Queensland, toads. And is anybody from Queensland here? Right, so you know all about toads, don't you? In a very real and personal way that only we can share in a self-help support group. Toads are real, and they are. And they're ugly, and they're part of a very important ecosystem, I know that. Sally and Haley just don't want to be hit up by the environmentalists on the group. However, at that time there were a lot of toads, like way too many toads in Brisvegas and in Queensland, so the university used to collect them. And I discovered that actually you could get paid for collecting toads. So I set up my own toad haul collection enterprise where I enrolled my 3 brothers who were all younger than me. I was the managing director, and their job was to collect toads, which you can only do in the middle of the night, by the way, in Queensland. And so my job was to hold the torch from at least about 500 metres away, shine it a long way and say, get the toads now. And we had KPIs. There are a number to get every night. And we collected the toads and we took them to the university. After that, I don't know what happened because I was just one part of the supply chain. I learned about supply chains at 10. And, but we made a hell of a lot of money collecting those Queensland toads that were a little bit annoying to a lot of people. And that was my first enterprise that really got a revenue stream at the age of 10 and employed people, which is fantastic. My 3 brothers who pretty much haven't talked to me since. So and the reason I'm telling you those stories is that everybody on this panel also, and many women in enterprise that I have spoken to, have these stories that actually started a very, very, very long time ago when they were children, and we don't often think about what was the journey that took us from there to here, and when were these seeds sown. And so I'm going to start with our panel tonight and ask them, and they're going to have way more interesting stories than me about how they started and what took them here to here today. Welcome, panel. So, from our left we have Hayley Morris from Sustainable Table and Sustainable Impact. We have Sally Quinn, the co-founder of Green Collect. We have Mari, who's got a very long surname.
Kuchenmeister.
Kuchenmeister, it's not that long.
No.
Kuchenmeister, who has a fantastic catering and cafe business called Dull. And we have Mina Barling, who's from Mari Stopes International. Please make them welcome. So, we're going to start with you, Hayley. Tell us about your first social enterprise endeavour and your journey to where you are today.
Oh, sure. I think it actually came into my mind when you were telling your toad story then and the story about the polished rocks, because ours was quite similar. My sisters and I had a lot of lemon trees in our backyard, and so we'd collect the lemons. We'd stand on the side of the road in Templestowe, and at that stage it was a dirt road, so it's a bit busier now. And we'd hold up a sign saying lemons for sale, and a car would go past every half an hour, and I think they just felt sorry for us and they'd stop, and it was like $1 for 10 lemons or something. But then we started to get a bit more commercial, and we made lemonade and lemon butter, and we sold it at the Camberwell market. By the time we split the company up, we had 6 of us involved, and I think we all ended up with about $300 in our bank account, so we were pretty happy with that.
And your journey from there to today?
Oh, right. I think from a social enterprise perspective, I think what sort of hit me is actually my time that I've spent in Africa. And really the game lodges over there, although they're very exclusive and beautiful, they are actually all set up a little bit like social ventures in that most of their employees are from the local community, and really when you're there, they're teaching you about the environment and appreciation of animals. And for me, it was spending time in this environment that made me realise how destructive my previous life in terms of operating on a day-to-day basis and not really thinking about my impact on the environment was. And it was sort of a light bulb moment for me, and that's sort of what got me into what I do now.
Wonderful. And I love the mergers and acquisitions with the lemons, and that was great. Early days. So Sally, on to you. Tell us about your first social enterprise memory.
Okay.
And how it got you to where you are today.
I haven't really recognised myself as an entrepreneur, but actually, scarily, quite a few stories do come to mind being a kid of things that I did that were enterprising. And one that really sticks in my mind was rolling balls of blue tack into sort of maybe about a Jaffa size. And this is when I was in grade 2 and blue tack was very new, and taking it to school and selling it for 50 cents a ball. And part of my sort of sales pitch, because blue tack was new, was that my dad had invented it and that this was a new product that, you know, you were going to get first. So the blue tack sales, it was quite successful back then. And the other one, which I'm not as proud of, was I'd noticed we didn't get money to take to the canteen. We were quite deprived. But I noticed that people would get small amounts of change, like 5 and 10 cents. And I realised that to a person who just bought something, you know, 5 cents on its own, you know, you can't buy anything else. So I would just let people know that you can't really do much with 5 cents. And I'd just ask for their change, because if you put it all together, I could buy myself something pretty good. So they're two stories of me as a kid. I also went busking as a not very good violinist when I was 11 and earned over $200 at the Victoria Market with my friend who couldn't sing. So, but in terms of that, I suppose, more formational experiences that led me to social enterprise, the biggest impact for me would be growing up in Broadmeadows and having a really early awareness of poverty and how hard poverty is. And I think witnessing my parents and the way our family lived in really caring about our neighbours, and for my parents actually choosing to live there for that very reason. So, having an awareness that people really struggled and that life wasn't fair and that my life actually was quite privileged. So as I got older, I think just really having a desire to work alongside people was something I wanted to do, and I ended up studying social work and worked as a social worker for a number of years and then kind of fell into social enterprise.
Wonderful, thank you. Mari?
Yes, well, I've got to go back along further than these young ladies to work out what I might have done as an entrepreneur in the early days. Well, I can't recall getting any money. Working at the local milk bar, I guess, after school to earn some pocket money. But when I was listening to the ladies talking, I was thinking that one of the other ways I used to occasionally make a little bit of money was when I used to go and stay with my very favourite Auntie Mari, whom I was named after, and she was a mad keen punter. And when I used to go there, she'd ask me if I'd like to pick the horses' names. And quite often, I used to pick the winners just through liking their names or their colours or anything. So I'd come back with this little bit of pocket money from doing this and share it with my brother and sister, who thought it was very, very exciting. But apart from that, I really went to school and was educated in Melbourne, and then went to work at the Children's Court, and I suppose that was my first job after leaving school. And I think I began to realise, although we did live in West Footscray, and there was, again, quite a few people there that were struggling, and a lot of migrants were coming into the country. As I said, I'm going back a lot longer than some of these young ladies. And I guess and the way we were brought up as well, it was for having a great strength for social justice and that everybody was equal. And I can remember my dad, when I was being quite cheeky one day about something or being smart, I can remember him saying to me, "It doesn't matter if you're talking to the rubbish man or the Prime Minister of Australia, you will address them equally and everybody's equal." And I can remember repeating that to one of my children one day, but they laughed because they just thought that, that they didn't really have a rubbish man because we were living on acres and the rubbish man didn't come. So but I think they got the point anyway. So I guess my first really big experience into social enterprise, and I was saying before that there wasn't a name for what we were doing as far as calling it a social enterprise is concerned, but one of my daughters actually in 1973 had the measles, and she had complications from the measles and had encephalitis, and Prue ended up with permanent brain damage. So from then on, she, obviously I didn't know anyone that had a disability at the time, and so I became very involved in helping and supporting her as much as I could. And that's how I became, got involved in a social enterprise. Prue went to mainstream school with her sisters to a girls' school for a while until she was 10, and then she went across to a special school. So I became very much part of the school community in a voluntary capacity, being on the Mothers Club and working as a volunteer in their little catering section and their home eco section, and became school council president, and realised that there was no lack of there was a huge lack of employment opportunities as far as people who were exiting Nelson Park Special School in Geelong, and a lot of people indeed were leaving and staying at home with nothing to do really. So one of the young people at work, at school rather, just looked at me one day and said, I did go searching for some opportunities and options, I have to say, but if you can imagine 26 years ago, there was the really old-style shelter workshop, which I found it not very stimulating, and certainly was looking for something much better, not only for Prue but for other young people. One of the young men in the home eco class said to me one day, "Mari, why don't we just open a cafe? We can cook." And here we are 20 years later with this, wonderful social enterprise now, and with, 52 young people with special needs and 20 support staff working in a really great business, and I'm there because I love it, actually. So so that's my little story.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And Mina?
Lucky last. I guess I have probably a similar story to you. I have a twin sister, and we grew up in a very small country town, Robe, in the southeast of South Australia. And we had a golf course, and lots of tourists would come and play golf, and very unsuspecting of the rat bag local kids, and we were quite rat baggy. But we learnt quite early on that if we took their golf balls and they only had so many, they'd definitely buy them back from us. So it was a very efficient model. But I guess my journey into social enterprise, like everyone on this panel, has sort of happened quite organically, and it's a bit of serendipity, I guess. So I had been brought up with some disadvantage, and I think I was always very keenly aware of social justice issues, but also very, very critical of traditional models and how effective they were. And I guess I've always sort of carried that thinking with me, and this has always sort of felt like a space that I think is, it has to work. It requires that for sustainability, so it's always a space that I've been very interested in.
That's wonderful. So Sally, tell us about you, because Green Collect is actually an organisation that you founded with your partner, Darren.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm intrigued about what that's like and what goes on for two founders, sharing a bed, not to put it too bluntly, and how you get things done.
Yeah.
And is it more efficient?
Yeah. I suppose the big thing was that Green Collect wouldn't have started if there weren't the two of us. We kind of had a dream together that we could do something that would be amazing for people and that would be amazing for the world and the environment. And Darren's study and work was in the environment sector, and mine was community development, social work. So it was kind of something that we birthed together, and along the way also had 4 children during the time that we started Green Collect. So, yeah, we've been busy. And I think it's a real joy for us because we share the amazing things that happen, but we also share the stresses and the really hard times. And I suppose we don't have to come home at the end of the day and kind of discover what happened, because we kind of find out during the day. And I suppose, we also want to include our kids in the vision of Green Collect too. So it's a very current thing in our lives, and the kids are very much, love Green Collect and want to work for Green Collect when they get bigger as well. But it can be tough, and it has been tough. We have different surnames, and I've been really, really glad that my mum, as a feminist, set that as an acceptable and desirable thing to do. So we're often in meetings with corporates and very professional, and I'm Sally Quinn and he's Darren Andrews, and kind of happy that they don't know that we've got this other thing happening on the side. And but sometimes a few people have raised eyebrows when we've gone out of a meeting and seen us be a bit too friendly with each other and kind of thought, what's going on there? And I suppose, another thing that comes to mind is we had some advisors do some work with us, and it's been really important to have external people have eyes into the organisation and provide, expert advice and a different perspective. And one of the things we did with a group was a risk analysis. And the biggest risk that these experts came up with was something going wrong with our relationship. And we were like, gee, great, thanks, more pressure, carrying a marriage together, keeping an organisation together. So, I suppose we're really conscious that we need to look after each other and be kind to each other in it all, and try to put some limits on the pillow talk of, at 1 o'clock in the morning, if one of us wakes up and says, I've got an idea, or, the other one's pretty good at saying, no way, you can't be serious. Like, nah, wait till at least 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's great. I love that it's, on that other thing that we have, being married, as well as cooking. You need a diary room at your place, right? And go and talk to yourself at 3 a.m. in the morning and show the other one when they wake up. I think that's wonderful, and the fact that you've got your children involved and interested is a powerful, it's a family. Actual enterprise, which I think is a really powerful and interesting model.
Can I just add just a thing on one of our kids, because I'm very proud to say that my son sometimes comes to work with me on a Saturday when I fill in a lunch break at one of our shops, and he prices the clothes, and we sell recycled clothes, and so he'll say, oh, it's Gourmet or it's Sass and Bide, and I'll sort of say, oh, that's pretty good, that's Australian designer. And we had to go to Chapel Street, and I was saying to the kids to pick something up, I was saying, this isn't Footscray, people here are really into how they look and material possessions, so, just be aware of that. And we just walked out of the car park and Elijah just looked up and said, there's Sass and Bide, there's Gourmet, there's Alana Hill. And I was so proud. So they very much get it.
Your son's got a future in the fashion industry. So Hayley, you've got a different model, which I think is really interesting. And one of the things that we're going to, explore tonight is actually all these different models and showing how they, there's a lot of variety of models of enterprise evolving in Australia at the moment. But you've done two things. You've actually set up a business as well as a non-profit that are all sitting under the one umbrella. How does that work, and how did you come to that decision?
Actually, it started off under the one umbrella of the not-for-profit, and I think just the everyday challenges of staying sustainable, trying to make income, we decided to go for our deductible gift recipient status so we could be a charity. And so we got that, which was fantastic. So that opened up our funding opportunities in terms of philanthropy, individual donations. So what I decided at that point in time was also to look at the operations we were doing from a business perspective, namely around a system which we've developed which helps companies manage and measure and report on their environmental and social impacts. We wanted to kind of grow that, and so the decision was made to make that into a separate entity, still with the mandate to be supporting Sustainable Table. So that was a good decision because that opened up the opportunities for investors, which we wouldn't have got if money was coming into the Sustainable Table. It becomes a donation. So that's still quite a new decision that was started. That was just late last year, and I've spent pretty much most of my time now on sort of trying to make that organisation sustainable as well as the not-for-profit. So I don't know if I've doubled my workload.
Yeah, so how are you going to get out of it? How are you going to move? What does the future look like for that?
I think there's, the for-profit is still a social venture in that the why we do it is because there are a lot of systems out in the marketplace, and specifically around the carbon tax coming in. A lot of companies are starting to need to really look at their management of their energy, and a lot more companies are starting to look at how they report on their sustainability performance. And all of the software systems that were out in the marketplace were really quite expensive. And so there was a lot of SMEs and a lot of companies out there who sort of weren't doing much. And it comes back to that, if you're not measuring it, then you're not managing it. So the idea was, how can we get more companies actually looking at their impact? And so let's build a system that allows that. So the system is hugely affordable, really simple to use, and it just sits under a for-profit. So we've got a way to go before that is sort of supporting the charity. But I think the future's quite bright. We've got a lot of people behind it and a lot of interest in it. It's just, I suppose it takes time. It's not a mission critical decision for a business to take on a system like this. There's 101 other things they need to be doing. So for us, it's really about sort of, carbon taxes coming in, you're going to have price rises, finding the right push button to get them on board.
Great. Thank you. Mina. Mina's what I kind of describe as an entrepreneur. So that idea that within an organisation or a larger institution, you're an entrepreneur, but you're not necessarily the founder or running the organisation. And I think that's a really interesting place. And I think we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs in Australia, and there's a lot of interest in social innovation and enterprise within institutions. But tell us, how does that work, and what's that like for you?
I guess, first of all, I work within an organisation where a culture around social enterprise and innovation is taken very, very seriously. And so individuals that come in to the organisation, whether it be in our head office or support offices in developed countries, or whether it be within our programs in developing countries, those people that come in and that really thrive within the organisation really have that entrepreneurial spirit, and there's a lot of space for both individuals and teams to really seek opportunity. At the heart of our organisation, what drives us is sustainability. We can't just do this just with donor funding. We also need to come up with models that work, that are very centred on what women need. So me as an individual, that's an environment that very, very much suits me, because you have as much space as you need. So it's just that thing of being the right fit as a human in the right kind of organisational culture, I guess.
Which is wonderful, and imagine if we had many more organisations that had that entrepreneurial focus, where people were allowed to thrive in that environment, but with the scaffolding and support
Exactly.
of organisations. It's a great model. So, Mari, you've your enterprise, actually, in terms of on the panel tonight, and as the founder still involved, is 20 years old.
Yes, it is
and
20.
That's a big, and congratulations, because that's a stunning, I think, result today in Australia in terms of social enterprise. I don't think that we have that many 20-plus-year-old enterprises. So what does sustainability mean to you, and how have you managed to grow and sustain this enterprise?
Well, sustainability obviously means that we, can continue on with our work and what we're doing, and that's very, very important to us. I think we are a not-for-profit organisation, but to be able to run a business in the community, just the same as any other business would be in the community, I think that's very important, and we realised that right from the beginning. I think it must be very, very difficult for organisations who rely solely on government funding, and that's probably the most frustrating part of running a social enterprise or a business service, as we've always, or now there are the Australian Disability Enterprises. We've had a name change several times in our time. The same as the young people at Dell and what they were called. I think they've been customers and consumers and clients and all sort of different names. But right from the very first day that we started our business, we've always referred to it as a business. We're in the business community. We wanted to have a business in Geelong that was in the business, not just start a little enterprise in a church hall or something like that, which indeed we were offered. We wanted to. It was very important to everybody that was involved with the project that that we could show that people with disabilities could be very valuable members of our community, and they could work and they could achieve, and all they really needed was the opportunity, to do so. And I think obviously we've well and truly proven that in the 20 years. But to be able to generate your own income is very, very important, and certainly very important to us, so that we don't have to continually wait for funding to come in. And probably the only frustrations we have had have been, overfunding. And the biggest frustration, of course, it took three, I always can't help but refer to it in this way all the time, is 3 long, frustrating years to gain funding to actually open our first cafe. And we now have a best practice model that we're sharing with other organisations virtually all around the country, and 8 organisations are now using the Dell model in their own enterprise. And one of the most recent ones is a very large organisation in Geelong called Coringal, and they actually, we worked with them to put the Dell model, best practice model, into Alcoa, which is a big smelter in Geelong that employs 300 or 400 people, and they took over the canteen there. And then from that, they've now taken over the canteen at CSIRO and Shell Canteen. So they're actually using that model to work that way as well. So they didn't have to use their funds to purchase equipment and start up from scratch. So that's a really great way. I often, when I'm visiting somebody in hospital, I go to the hospital canteens. I think, a Dell model would be just fabulous here. You know, you could really do something here, and all the equipment's here. So I guess that's the main you know, as I said, the only frustration really that we've had. We were very sensible. We've had a fabulous board of management. I think that's been very important right from the beginning. We put together a board of management that had business expertise, legal, financial, disability, of course, human services, and the education part of it, because we do train young people at Dell to move through to open employment. That's the part. We have a wonderful flow-through model now going, that people come and they're trained up for 4 or 5 years, and then we actually move them through to open employment. And we have a fantastic retention rate with that. It's up around the 95%, so that's really great too. So I guess from our point of view, I believe it's really important, if you've got the opportunity to generate some of your own income, that really is very helpful, and I think that's why we're sustainable. Plus, we've got the most fantastic product in a wonderful setting with great employees, and you know, it's a pleasure to do what we do. I think all of the staff at Dell really feel the same, because you know, the young ones there that we're training up are there because they want to be there, they want to learn, they want to achieve, they want to have their dreams realised, just like anybody else in the community. And you know, we do a staff. Well, we call out at Dell, we have our support staff and our supported staff, so everybody's staff. There's no clients or that. So we have a satisfaction survey, and you know, every year at the top of the list from the staff satisfaction survey is that the most important thing about being at Dell is to have friends, and to have our social life and connection, and to do their training. And most of them go to our local Gordon TAFE, where they do their certificate in hospitality. So we didn't become an RTO ourselves. We feel it's very important for people to do their training at their TAFE college, so it's another step in the community. Anything that they can do in the community, that's what we want them to do, to be part of our community.
Fantastic.
So, thank you.
Hayley, tell us about, let's get down into it a little bit, and with you, why not with you? And tell us about, you know, being a woman in this space. And, you know, the surveys are very clear that when men are asked for, you know, their successes and their failures, their successes are like 90% and their failures are like 10%. I find it's the other way around with women. But I am interested in kind of what your scar tissue is, and what you've learnt, and what it's like being a woman leading an enterprise.
I think immediately what jumps to mind is what I do find challenging, and I can imagine a lot of women find challenging, especially at certain times of the month, is the emotions that come into everything. And I think, you know, we do what we do because we love what we do, and it's our life and it's our passion, and sometimes that comes from a very emotional place. And I think I have had, you know, I've done things and I've said things which have come from a very emotional place, and it doesn't come out right. You know, you get passed off as being an emotional female, and your message, which might have been really good, it comes out terrible, and you've got no credibility to what you were going to say. So I think what I find one of the biggest challenges is keeping a level head sometimes, and particularly I work in impact sustainability with all men, and it's I find that a challenge, is that always sort of having to, in a way, present myself a bit more masculine about the way I deal with things and try and take the emotions out. But then at the same time, you don't want to lose your femininity and who you are. So it's sort of about making sure you're operating, recognising the emotions, working out what message they have to tell you, but then still choosing your words appropriately, and not sort of just throwing your arms in the air and telling everyone to go and F off.
Although sometimes that might be right. Sally, what about mentors? There's a lot of discussion at the moment around kind of, you know, what's the role of mentors, and when should you get a mentor, and what kind of mentor? What are your thoughts on this topic?
I think when we started, we were really feeling our way, and I think the social enterprise sector wasn't really kind of cohesive, and even that name wasn't common. So this was about 10 years ago when we first began. So I suppose I wasn't sure where I would look for mentors. Was it in the corporate world? Oh, I don't know about that. The community sector, you know, I've got some heroes there. The environment sector, that was new to me. So I think it was hard to know where to look and who would those people be. And I suppose in terms of my inspiration, perhaps it's actually the people that we work with. So Green Collect works with around 50 people in employment and training activities, and most of those are people who've experienced homelessness, the prison system, come as refugees. And so actually those women, in a lot of ways, are the women who teach me about life. And I think at Green Collect we really like to turn things upside down, and I think kind of what was being said in the introduction about, being a bit of a, having a bit of a revolt, and not doing things the way things have always been done. So I like to learn from the people who maybe people say you've got nothing to teach us, but those women who've come as refugees and seeing their strength and, I suppose they're my heroes. But in terms of a mentor, I do have to say this because it really is true, that my mum would be my mentor. And in terms of the women's stuff, I'm very good at being emotional, and that being something that comes through in my work, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. Not everyone else, not a lot of people aren't. I was in a meeting once where I started my sentence with, well, I really feel, and one man just said, right, stop, you've lost me already. And so sometimes I'll say, I really think. But yeah, my mum has been an amazing role model as a really intelligent thinker, but a very, amazingly compassionate and courageous woman. And yeah, I'll tell a little story because this is one of the most powerful things that I kind of take through to having it as being a really significant moment in my life when I think I was about 10, and it was Christmas morning, and we went to a really poor family's house to give them Christmas presents, and this was a very poor family in all senses of the word, and we took doona covers and sheet sets for this family. And I suppose what the really incredible thing about this story was that we didn't just give the presents, but my mum went from room to room changing all of the sheets and putting these sheets and doona covers on really smelly, wee-stained beds. And yeah, I suppose that picture of compassion and dignity is something that I suppose, in terms of a mentor, that's kind of she's my greatest influence.
That's wonderful. Do you have a number?
I had to run down and get a tissue because I knew I'd need it. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. And Mina, I'm going to, in literally 30 seconds, we're going to open it up to everyone to have a conversation so that you can ask them questions. And I just want to ask Mina a last question, which is about, I guess, one of the key pieces of advice that you would give a new beginner, a young woman who came to you and said, I want to begin a social enterprise, or I want to, begin this journey. What is it that you would say to them today, given the path that you've been on?
I'll probably apologise first because it's probably terrible advice, but it did accidentally work for me. And I guess that is to just do what you're really, really passionate about and find a way into that space, whatever way that you can find into that space. And it might not be very sensible. I remember when I first started studying, my daughter had started school, and I just felt this real pull to this area of reproductive health that I work in, and there's probably 5 jobs in the world in this area kind of thing. I knew that it wasn't that big, but it's just, I guess, not worrying about that stuff will hopefully fall into place. And if it doesn't, then you just go to plan B, but just do what you're really into, I think.
See, perfect advice. Why would you tell somebody not to take your advice? Well, I'm going to ask then, Mari, what advice you would give people who are coming and saying, I want to set up a social enterprise. What's given the journey that you've been on and the incredible success that you've had?
Well, first of all, to find out, I would be interested in what sort of enterprise they wanted to start, and which direction they were going to take. Try and give them as much help as possible, offer to assist, and indeed that's what we do quite often and quite a lot. Invite them to come and have a look at what we're doing and see how that would fit in with the ideas that they may have for the enterprise that they're looking at. It might not necessarily be hospitality. I think you could, our social enterprise could be used in a whole other sort, different types of business, and obviously it is being. Yes, and we're really delighted to be able to assist people. So we'd certainly offer as much help as we possibly could to get them going, really. So, but certainly and also to listen to the people that are going to be working in your social enterprise. I think most of the best ideas that we've ever had have come from the young people who are actually working in the enterprise. And if you listen to them and what they want and what they want to do, I think that's where the core is. And often, that's where all, it really is, and it's just such a worthwhile thing to do. I was talking about the surveys before. This year we also have a wonderful relationship with one of our Rotary groups, and they provide a Pride of Workmanship award for Dell each year, and we nominate 4 young people, or the supervisors on the floor nominate 4 young people for the award. And I arrived at work one day and one of the young women said to me, "Oh, Mari, I've got some really exciting news," and I said, "Yes," and she said, "I've been nominated for that award, that Rotary award," and I said, "Oh, that's fantastic, congratulations." And so she was just so proud. I said, "Did Mum and Dad proud?" And Mum and Dad were proud. But at that same week, we'd been asking people to do their client or their staff satisfaction surveys, and down at the bottom of hers, it had additional comments, and she had in her little additional comment, she had that she's so proud that she'd been nominated for the award and that heaven must be smiling down on her. Well, you can imagine I just sat there and thought, this is what I do, why I do what I do, and why we do what we do with the other staff as well. And we have so many moments like that you just know there's nowhere else you'd rather be, really. So all my friends are playing golf and retired, and they're waiting for me. And I keep saying, when you can find me something better to do than what I'm doing, I'll be there, and it ain't putting a little white ball around the golf course.
No, especially with Mina and her friends picking up the balls and selling them back to the enterprise. All right, we're going to throw to questions now. So this is your opportunity. I've had a good crack at these 4. They're warmed up now for you. And so please just raise your hand. You're going to get given a microphone as well. Thanks, Ian. There's one up there already. Okay, so we've got microphones. Please raise your hand.
Hi, my name is France, and I guess what I'd like to know is how you've got through the hardest times in your life when you've been trying to care for a family, carry on a day job, and bring your enterprise together, as well as the 100 other challenges we face. What's really helped you the most?
Wonderful. So, in the daily life of all the things that we do as women, and the research is very clear that women actually just increase the workload. They don't decrease their workload when they take on this work. How do you do it all, and how do you get through the tough times? Who would like to have a crack at that? Sally, would you like to?
Yeah, well, we've certainly had lots of tough times in our organisation. Yeah, there's been lots of times when the organisation hasn't had enough money to pay both Darren and I, and that's not good when, we both are in the same organisation. And so we've had really great safety nets of family and friends, an amazing community, and I think being part of a community allows us to do what we do, and being okay about receiving help. These days, if anyone offers me any tiny bit of help in anything, I say yes. Cooking, money, whatever it is, I really, am, I suppose, open about sharing the needs as well. And that's something I've learnt a lot through our staff, because when you are poor and you don't have safety nets, your needs are laid bare. And I think I see those people as role models to us, that it's okay to ask for help and to struggle. And Actually, it's often, a really beautiful thing in our organisation. It's a long story, but I was stuck in a car park and I couldn't get out because I didn't have any money in the bank. And, the longer I was there, the bigger, it was actually the airport. And I couldn't leave because I couldn't pay my, get out of there. And I rang Darren and he was with one of our staff who's actually a homeless person. And this person said, I've got $50. If we go to a bank now and put it in, the money will go into her account straight away. And he said to Darren, isn't this crazy, a homeless bum like me helping respectable people like you? So I suppose it's that really sharing of life that, I suppose gets us through.
Community. Hayley, do you have a...
I have to be careful about how honest I am here.
No, you don't.
No, I've just gone through a very, very tough last 6 months, actually. So this is very permanent question for me. But I actually use my work as my outlet, and throwing myself into that, how good that is for my health sometimes. But I think when things can get really tough in your personal life, my work makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's focusing on why I'm doing it and not losing the connection to the why. I think it's really important, and so personally I do things like I enjoy running, I try and practice meditation and yoga, and that for me is really about sort of clearing the headspace and getting back to the why, and that's when my work's so important, and it is really... That's a bit of therapy for me. Oh, that and a good therapist.
That and a good therapist. Another phone number we're going to need tonight, no doubt. Have we got another question? Yes, over here.
I work full-time and I'm a student at RMIT as well. And on the side, my other career is writing and doing some TV presenting, a bit of an appearance activist, if you like. And I don't earn much money from doing what I love. I love what I do, if anyone's here from work, from my day job. And that's what pays me, but my other stuff doesn't pay me. But how do you know when to make the jump and, when to cut back on your day job to do what you love?
So how do you actually create, how do you know when to move from the thing that you love and that you're doing with your passion and to turn it into your day job? Mina? Help us out here.
I don't think you ever know. I think you just need to take some risks sometimes, and probably bad advice again, but if it all goes pear-shaped, then go to plan B. But if it doesn't, it's a pretty fantastic thing.
Mm-hmm. Mari, how did you know that you should do DAL?
I don't know. Well, after looking at what was out there and what was available for people leaving school with disabilities, just to see, the mundane, job. It wasn't so much, people were just sitting around, if you can imagine the old-style shelter workshops 26 years ago, and people were just sitting around doing packaging, but it wasn't just that. Somebody has to do the packaging. It wasn't the job. It was just the lack of stimulation. There wasn't even any background music or anything. You just walk into these great big buildings, almost as big as this, with all these people just sitting around, packing pegs and doing things that just, and as I said, no stimulation. There's some boring jobs at Dell too, but we try to have it, a bit of fun as we're doing them. So, I just knew after I just went home and said to my husband, there is nowhere out there good enough for our girl. So that's it. So, and
what a wonderful
can I
reason.
just
Yes.
to add to that, I think it's that thing of being really instinctive, and if you have that sort of high level of instinct you just can see the planets all coming together or something. I'm not spiritual in that way, but there is something where you start kind of seeing, for example, the area that I work in, family planning will be one of the biggest aid priorities for this year as a global priority. And so we've got gates coming in, and USAID have been around for a long time, but there is a part where everything just comes together and you have that moment, and I guess it's just being quite instinctive about that and kind of picking that.
I heard the founder of Spreets the other day in Sydney talking about the fact that it came to him what he should be doing when there was a feather first, a little idea, and then a rock, and then a brick hit him on the side of the head, and he thought, well, it's time to move and do something. So, that idea that things come in different forms. Have we got another question? Yes, we do. Hi.
So you've all sort of gone into spaces that didn't really exist previously. How did you crack that market? Like, how do you get people to believe in you and get people to talk to you and invest in your idea in any sort of way?
What a brilliant question. So how do you get people to invest in brand, new ideas and different ways of doing things, Hayley?
Yeah, I think it actually does come a little bit down to the individual and the passion that you show for what you're doing. And I was watching something recently about this guy, and he's talking about, you know, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think if you've got that down pat and you believe enough in what you're essentially kind of selling, you take people along the road without even realising it, and you start to create sort of groundswell, and stuff just kind of happens. And I think it is a bit like what we're talking about, that the inertia and the world starts pushing in your direction. And for me, that always comes from that, you know, place of passion. And
Sally?
Yeah, I think passion is a huge one, and really believing that what you want to do can and will work. But I think that does need to be grounded in a well thought through idea as well. So I think being really clever about it as well as being passionate, and I think being clever is about seeing where the needs are, really finding an area where there is a need and being creative and innovative in how you want to solve that problem, and bringing other people on board. I think in one way, you know, we're up here as individuals, but we don't do what we do on our own. And I think it is that, you know, inspiring and mobilising people. So I think it really is something you do with other people. But I think we've learnt through many mistakes that being intuitive is really important, but also kind of having a method that's sound as well, and kind of travelling along. Yeah.
Great. Yes, hi.
Hi, my name's Laura. I work in the venture capital industry. We invest in Australian entrepreneurs in the technology space.
What's your phone number, Laura? Sorry.
So one of the challenges that I personally face, the rest of my team are male, is probably between 2 and 3% of the deal flow our organisation has seen in the last 10 years have been female-owned or female-led businesses. You've obviously all done a fabulous job in getting where you are and having the courage to start up and determination to succeed. What do you think are the barriers that are stopping women from stepping out there, starting businesses and telling the world about them?
So the barriers for women in this space, getting starting up and then sustaining and growing and sustaining enterprises and businesses.
And I think the reality around some of the stats that have been mentioned around, you know, women on boards and in, you know, highest level of governance, you know, we are disadvantaged because we don't have those built-in networks, and often they are boys' clubs, and that's where a lot of the money is. So I think there is a part of, you know, being on the margins of some of that, and how do we shift into the centre of that. And I think, you know, things like this, where women are coming together and telling their stories and kind of recognising the intelligence and the drive and the skill that's there. So I think women can do some of that work together. Yeah, they are big structural issues, and I'm a feminist and I'm really proud to say that. But I think I think for us, what we did was quite grassroots, and when we were offered some corporate funding, we were like, we can't sell out to the corporates. But then someone said to us, you know, take their money and do good. So I suppose it's that being not afraid to step up to the highest levels, and really believing that we can do it, and maybe we do it differently, and maybe we do it better.
Mina, do you want to talk about how, because Murray Stokes is a good model, right, for this?
For women?
Supporting women, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, what we do is very much focused on making sure that women have access to essential services, but also within our own organisation, we certainly have very good. We have a lot of women in our workplace, especially in in Australia and the UK. It changes depending on what country we're in terms of the representation. But what I was going to say is before I started working with Murray Stopes, I was doing some work with the South Australian Government on managing the establishment of the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, and it was my first sort of time in this space, and I'd come from very much sort of social justice sort of focus, both within NGOs and government, and so probably that critical lens. And one of the things that I really noticed when I came into this space, this social innovation, social enterprise, venture capital space, is yes, it's intensely focused on social good, but a sustainable business model. But one of the things that did sort of worry me initially is a lot of it felt like a replication of existing quite patriarchal models, but then kind of a fresh, sexy new language around it. And there was a part of that worried me a bit. So I was I was looking at the space and going, where do women sit in this space? Where do new Australians sit in this space? Where do people with disabilities sit in this space? And I really just could not see it replicated. But as I started to work in a more global space, I think I saw much better examples. But for someone like you, I mean, the weight shouldn't be on your shoulders, it should also be on your colleagues. But what are you guys doing to make sure that that you're not just replicating those inequalities, and what systems have you got in place to try and address some of that? Because it's very hard to see the need for this new space if we can't address some of those fundamental challenges.
My name's Emma and I work at The Big Issue, and it's actually a question in regards to marketing and the balance and striking that right balance between promoting the social good that each of your organisations do versus the amazing products and services that you offer. So as an example, we believe we've got an amazing product in a magazine, edited by award-winning journalists, etc., but we're constantly battling, I guess, that balance, and to, when you've got a billboard that's saying you've got the opportunity to put 10 words together, which one do you lead with? So just a question to those panel members about that balance between marketing and when you dial up one versus the other.
So, marketing versus the cause, and Hayley, you must deal with this a lot because you're actually publishing.
I think the role of marketing and getting your message out there is so important. I mean, the Sustainable Table, our sort of introduction into the world was a book, The Sustainable Table, and for us, it really was about, not everyone's going to buy a book about sustainable food or the environment. In fact, not many people will, even though we love it. But, is how do we get people to read the book, learn about the environment? And that was through the design and I suppose the marketing of it. So people will pick it up and they go, it looks lovely. Look, here, I'll show you. It looks beautiful. And the only sort of indications anything environment is called the Sustainable Table, but it's also a functional cookbook. So for us it was about making sure the drawing was something, I suppose, marketing-driven, design-driven and beautiful, but the messages and the key learnings of it being really fundamental to the cause and what we believe in. And it's a lot more of a subtle way to teach people and I suppose has probably a greater impact than sort of being too hard-nosed with your messages because most people sort of, they glaze over when you go in with like a climate change or the world's ending and our food system's destroying the planet and, it's all too hard, what can I do? And we're in the business of trying to engage individuals and get people to act. So it's a balance, but I think it's one I personally believe our organisation does quite well.
Mari, you have to do marketing with your business.
Well, we do a certain amount, but mostly we pride ourselves on the product that we produce, and we don't spend very much money on advertising at all. We believe that word of mouth is the best form of advertising, and that's how we've grown. And I have to say, in the beginning, there was a lot of scepticism, particularly from government representatives, about people with disabilities working in the food industry. And, it wasn't, I guess because I wasn't thinking that way because I was working with people with disabilities out at school, it wasn't until a couple of people said, what do you think the public will think about, people with disabilities, working with food? And, I used to say, what do you mean? And they go very red in the face because I wanted an explanation of what I knew what they meant, but and obviously they were, they had their concerns. But it was one of those threats that eventually got us the funding when I threatened to report them for discrimination against, and they were the government people. They learnt to be a little bit concerned about the little red-headed lady down in Geelong, I can tell you.
I'm sure that's an understatement, Mary.
Well, there was one incident where they were, one of the government departments was insisting that we put a disability sign on the front of the business. And because of these sorts of comments that we'd heard, just sort of under the surface, we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to open up a cafe like any other cafe. So, when we were taken to task about this, about not having a sign up, I just said, well, if I was opening this cafe, I wouldn't stick a sign out the front saying I'm a short red-headed lady and I'm about to open a cafe. So why do I need to put up on the window that people with disabilities are going to be working at this cafe? Because we always have promoted the cafe as it is a supported employment program, but it's a fabulous cafe that provides wonderful food who happens to employ people with special needs. That wasn't the main focus, and that's but we have, in the beginning we really didn't have any money to use for advertising. That was the main thing. But then we just knew that if you provide the product, and look, we did open the door and people just came in, and we'd occasionally have people saying, oh, you've got a lot of people working in here, and yes, it's a training program for young people leaving school. Oh, what a great idea. They'd buy their gorgeous lunch and off they'd go and be back the next day. So that's how we just kept, building and building. And, today between the two cafes, we probably feed 500 people a day. Wow. So it's really a very big business. We have, the catering is very busy every day. Both the cafes are very busy, and it's nothing for one of the cafes to serve up to 300 people, for lunch and coffees and the rest of it. So it's just grown, nicely, and just proves that people with special needs / disabilities can do that once they've been given the opportunity to do it, and to move on to open employment, which is just wonderful. A lot of them are moving through, so it's really, and it's to their credit, and I guess that's my inspiration for being there. They're just so supportive of each other, and it's just a wonderful thing to see, really.
Wonderful. I think that's I know that there's probably a lot more questions in the room, but I think that's a wonderful place to end, in the sense of why everyone's doing what they're doing today, which is for the people that they're working with and creating different opportunities for. And I think that I've certainly learnt an enormous amount. I want to thank each of you for the tremendous courage and the really deep authenticity that you bring to this, but also the passion and love. And I think that that's something that's unique around women who are incredibly smart and incredibly strategic, but also bring their heart, the head and the heart together. And I think that's one of the most magnificent things that women bring into this space. So I thank each of you and congratulate you all on what you've contributed to this sector in Australia to date, and will continue to, I'm sure. And thanks for joining us here tonight. Thank you.